Okay, we're going to for my final guest for this hour. I am delighted to be speaking with Bruno Cheskel, whose book The Drawer, The Drawer by Vince Aletti, I should say, has just received the Photo Book of the Year award by Paris Photo Aperture. So congratulations and welcome, Bruno.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't think this works. It does. Okay.
So just to introduce Bruno briefly, it's interesting to have you here for an artist talk since you are primarily known as a publisher.
Yes.
Bruno's the founder of Self-Publish Be Happy, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And Self-Publish Be Happy Editions has recently entered into a joint venture with Mac. And Bruno also has fairly recently opened a space in Milan. So is not only working with books but projects, in many different registers and different forms. But we're here to talk about The Drawer by Vince Aletti. And your role in this book was not just that of a publisher. So, first of all, my first question would obviously be, can you just tell us who Vince Aletti is?
Vince Aletti, it's a writer and a critic. Started in the 1970s and 80s in New York as a writer for music, for disco music, for the Village Voice. And then started writing about photography for the New Yorker, etc., etc. He's published many different books. His interest oftentimes is around contemporary art and photography and fashion. He did this amazing book called Files for Phaidon about the history of the for fashion photography in the context of magazines. He has one of the biggest collection of magazines, fashion magazines that I ever encountered by a private collector.
Actually, the image that you just saw was Vince Aletti's home. And this image was taken about 5 years ago. And Bruno told me a little earlier that there are many more magazines and books in there now. So you can see just what kind of collector we're talking about.
Yeah, which I think is a interesting starting point to think about The Drawer, because I known Vince for many years when I was living in New York in the end of the 2010s. And at that time, I met him and I started going there regularly. I would bring biscuits and we have tea in the afternoon. And he would show me stuff that he purchased, that people have given to him, magazine, photograph. We're talking about thousands of images that has been accumulated. And in one of these flat files that he has in his living room, so now in his house there's only 3 places in which you can sit. There is one place in the sofa, which is only one place, where he watches, what's that channel that is only rerun old movies?
Turner Classic Movies.
Turner Classic, yes. So there is that seat, and then there are 2 chairs where you can sit for eating. The kitchen is basically so full of books that he never cooked in his life. Only during the lockdown, I cooked for the first time in his life. And then, of course, the bedroom. And then the other bedroom is basically inaccessible. So he will basically pick up material from all of these kind of collections, from magazine, etc., etc. And in this flat file in the living room, he will collect material that is basically ephemera, photographic ephemera, so magazine covers, invitation from show, etc., etc., that he collected since he was a teenager. So when he was a teenager, he found in fashion magazine and a way to escape as a kind of gay boy in the 1960s his kind of life. And he will collect these images oftentimes of beautiful women, sometimes of boys, and he will hang them on the wall. And he basically carry on doing it. So nobody knows his age, but we assume around 70s maybe. He's been collecting all this material. So he has hundreds and hundreds of images in this flat file. So once he pulled this flat file, and I was amazed how the composition itself felt like a collage, an artist collage, I guess. And that was the kind of genesis of the project.
So this is something I didn't realize. So were these images that were in this flat file? These were images that initially he would cut out of a publication and put on the wall.
And he still does. So, of course, the flats now has artworks everywhere, you know, painting, photograph, and he changes all the time. So it's like a kind of salon that he does for himself, for his own pleasure. And this more ephemeral material, as now is in the fridge and in the kitchen, you know, it doesn't have a kind of big display, but it will change all the time. Hence why the material is as recent as last year when the book was published.
I mean, I think one of the striking things when you start looking through this book is the different visual kind of worlds that collide in it. So you have, you know, kind of fine art photography that I guess we're familiar in seeing in a context like that, but that's only one small ingredient here.
Right.
There's, you know, high art, there's porn or erotica, you know, there's images from newspapers like sports images or celebrities. There's, you know, drawings, you know, reproductions of other artworks. And so I'm curious to know, like, did you kind of set out to deliberately, you know, in each one of the spreads combine these different elements? Or was it, what was the kind of, the way that these collages that the book is made up of, how did those come together?
No, it was absolutely him. So basically we set up with this photographer and the art director and designer, Bruce Asher, who, you know, engineer the object. So the pages are the exact reproduction of the drawer. So it's a scale 1:1, and that's why you relate to the material with the same that you would do basically with the drawer itself. And what we did was that we set up basically an impromptu studio where there was basically a light, and then there would be the drawer at the bottom, and then he was sitting on a chair, and he would rearrange and then tell us. We were in the other room where there was a computer and the camera, I mean the camera there and the computer so the photographer could see, and then he would say, do it, and we'll take a picture, and that's basically, maybe there were probably double the numbers of the pictures that we taken of the drawer, and then they were selected to whatever is in the book, which had more to do with repetition more than actually wasn't happy. I mean, some composition were better than others, but it was basically a kind of impromptu and immediate response to images, which is the kind of magic of working with Vince. It just kind of respond to the material in a way that is very instinctual, to the point that he never talk about it, because I oftentimes talk about the book as a biographical book, because one thing that, you know, you mentioned there are fine art images, but there's also a lot of images about his life, his community. So his friendship with Susan Sontag, of course his kind of really close friendship with Peter Hujar, and so you will find a lot of pictures of Hujar. There's a famous portrait of Hujar, of Vince wearing a kind of female dress on the beach. So, and then there is of course his obsessions, the people he fancies. So he's now obsessed with what's his name? The reggaeton.
Bad Bunny.
Bad Bunny. He's obsessed with Bad Bunny.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. So but he would never talk about it. To him, photography is this. Of course, he writes about photography, but other people's photography. But photography for him, it's pleasure. And it's a pleasure that it's a response to images, that it's immediate and unfiltered.
I mean, that's one thing. Obviously, I thought this was a little bit surprising for, you know, somebody that is known as a writer with a huge career. There's no text in the book.
Right.
Like, was there ever a conversation around that? Was there any, you know, desire on your part or on his to actually have a text in the book? Or do you feel like it was necessary to kind of just leave that drawer as it was in a way?
He refused to write.
He refused?
Yes. Yeah, because I mean, I'm not a big believer of introduction, but I thought because it was such a personal book and project that would have been interesting to hear from him about it. and he refused to do it because he wanted people to relate to it in the way that he does, when he pulled the drawer, and see images that accidentally mix with each other. And so the only chance I heard him talking about it was with Carmen Wynand once we organized this conversation between the two of them, because of course they're both interested in ephemera and images and rethinking about images in different contexts. And that was the closer I got to him actually thinking through. He doesn't want to think about it. He refuses to think about it, which is interesting. So this talk is probably better with me. It would have been very short with Vince. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be very short with you too,
Okay,
Bruno.
well,
Sorry.
it's over. Okay.
But I mean, so he wouldn't write. But did he say anything about the final book once he had it in his hands? Did he react to it?
No, he loves it, but he doesn't want to think what those images mean to him. Because, those pictures means grief, youth, desire, they're the sort of kind of mix. And of course, for us outside, it's the world of Vince, but also it's a world of photography. I mean, I have to say, I'm very surprised the book won, because there were beautiful contenders to this book. And also because, but then thinking about it, I think what this book does, it's a kind of unfiltered celebration, which maybe in a moment in time where we're all a bit distressed about the world and where we are, unfiltered celebration of beauty and possibility in photography is maybe what we need.
Hear, hear. Do we have time maybe for one question from the audience? No questions from the audience, so we are going to end this.
They're offended, they're leaving.
Sorry?
They're offended and they're leaving. Outraged.
They are against unfiltered celebration, Bruno.
They hate it.
But I would like to end it on that note. I think that's quite a nice note to end it on. Where can people find copies of the book?
So there's only 5 copies left of the book in Europe. They are in the States. But so if you want a copy, this is the time to get it.
Okay, please don't fight over getting the 5 copies of the book.
No, but I'm just mentioning it.
So on the Mac SPBH
SPBH is just
book
there.
booth.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Bruno.
Thank you.